The House of Kuru, Part 1, Chapter 29, Birth of the Pandavas, Arjuna. One morning, as Kunti and Madri came back from foraging, Pandu approached Kunti and said, "Dearest wife, look at how much pleasure and happiness we have derived from our two children. I worry this happiness will be short-lived, as eventually they will pass their infancy. So I was thinking, how great would it be to have a child from Indra, the king of the celestials? Would not the glory of the house of Kuru triumph? Dear wife, I wish for a child from Indra. Please invoke the king of all gods and bear me a son full of glory," implored Pandu. Kunti's face held a somber look. She nodded curtly. "My lord and conqueror of the Trigartas, I will for your pleasure invoke the celestial deity Indra, the ever-glorious king of gods. However, heed this warning. It is inappropriate for a woman to bear more than 3 children. It burdens the planet Earth with more weight, more resources, and more effort is needed to keep up the family, since we are living in the forest, living off the land. So please, my king, after this child, please do not ask for more children from me," said Kunti with her palms folded. Pandu nodded in agreement. As always, Kunti and Pandu consulted the sages for the best time to invoke the celestial king of the gods. The sages and astrologers gave Pandu an auspicious time under the Mrigashirsha constellation, when the moon falls under the sign of Taurus. Both Pandu and his wife commenced the ritual to beget a son from Devendra, the king of all the celestials. Kunti recollected the sacred hymn in her head and began repeating it, while Pandu envisioned the spectacular warrior Indra while meditating on him. The couple performed intense penance, and soon the moon moved away from the star, but there was no fruit. Pandu was stunned. No violent wind, no thunderstorms, no lightning. Why, not even a ray of sunshine fell on the couple. "Something is wrong," uttered Kunti. "Indeed, are you sure you performed it correctly?" asked Pandu. "My lord, I am as virtuous as I am intelligent. You will indeed need to trust that I did," insisted Kunti, and Pandu agreed. The two went back to the hermitage disappointed. "Perhaps this is a sign we should stop," said Pandu. But Kunti disagreed. "One must not give up our pursuits after one attempt, my lord," she said. "Let us wait for the star and the moon to appear again. We shall try once more," said Kunti. The moon waxed and waned. The full moon passed, and once more the moon fell into the sign of Taurus, under the constellation of Mrigashirsha. Once more, Pandu and Kunti attempted the ritual. But alas, once more there was no fruit. Pandu was devastated. "Who were we to think we could bind Devendra, the king of celestials? We are but mere mortals," said a dejected Pandu. Kunti was disappointed. She was unable to fulfill the wishes of her lord. She kept pondering on how exactly things went wrong. Durvasa was a seer of godlike prowess. This just didn't make sense. "My lord, the sage Durvasa is a sage of tremendous potential. Let me meditate on his image. Perhaps the right thought would appear to me," said the wise Kunti. She sat on the same straw mat and commenced meditating on the image of sage Durvasa. And much to their surprise, the sage himself materialized right before them. Pandu and Kunti were stunned by his appearance. "Dear Kunti, I remember you when you were a little lass. How are you, my child? Is this man your husband? Inquired the sage. O mighty incarnate of Rudra, the best among sages, under your blessing and kindness I have grown to be a beautiful maiden. Yes, O wondrous sage, this is the Emperor of Hastinapura, my lord and husband, said Kunti meekly. Durvasa let out a loud roar of laughter. Ah! Exactly as I thought. You are afflicted by the curse of Kindama, are you not, Pandu? Asked Durvasa. Pandu held his head low. Yes, O mighty sage, I am a cursed being. Oh, what a folly I did, said Pandu. Yes, Pandu, some lessons are best learned through difficulty. Now tell me, why have you invoked me? Asked the sage. Forgive me for invoking you for such a petty reason, O mighty sage of severe austerity. But the boon you bestowed upon me is not bearing fruit. I wish to invoke Devendra, the king of all the celestials. We have tried twice, but to no avail, said Kunti. Ho, ho, ho! You truly are ambitious. The king of deities himself. Let me see, said Durvasa with a pensive tone. After a few moments of deep thought, Durvasa clapped his hand and said, Kunti, though you have pleased me with your servitude, Devendra is a very powerful deity to bind. Fear not, my prowess as a sage will bear fruit, but as you are trying to invoke the king of all celestials, you need to perform severe austerities to win him, both you and your husband, to which both Kunti and Pandu immediately agreed as they got up from their straw mat and bowed before him. Pandu, you will need to stand on one leg from sunrise until sunset, meditating on the form of Indra, and Kunti, you must live only on water, iterating on the sacred mantra I gave you, and when Indra is pleased, he will bestow upon you the child you so desire, instructed Durvasa. As both Kunti and Pandu bowed low, and as they raised their heads, the sage Durvasa had vanished. Burning with ambition, Pandu woke early the next day, well before sunrise, bathed in the holy river, the Ganges, and got into a position of standing on one leg with his arms stretched high up, palms touching each other as he began meditating on the form of the mighty Indra. Kunti was not far behind. She had already set up the straw mat and commenced iterating on the sacred incantation given by the powerful Durvasa. Both Pandu and Kunti followed Durvasa's instructions to the word. Days followed to weeks, which eventually turned to months, but neither Pandu nor Kunti were willing to stop. Madri, along with some of the sages and hermits in the forest, took care of the little Bhima, although it was a mighty feat, and Yudhishthira, who had now begun uttering words. Time passes slowly when one is in anticipation of a great reward. And this cannot be more true for Pandu and Kunti, as they toiled arduously to win the grace of the mighty Indra, king of celestials, to bestow upon them a child of his equal. Pandu had grown a thick beard, while Kunti had become lean, and there were obvious signs of severe austerities on her body. Fortunately for the two, the mantra provided by Durvasa was of extreme potency. Coupled with the austerity of Pandu and Kunti, the entire heavens began to heat with the prowess of their penances. Yet Pandu and Kunti were unrelenting in their pursuit of the king of the celestials. One morning, on a full moon day, when the constellations Purva Phalguni and Uttara Phalguni cusped under the moon sign of Leo the lion, Pandu's hand began to tremble and hurt unusually. Kunti began to get exhausted iterating on the mantra given to her by the sage. Clouds blotted out the sun, and a terrific thunder was heard throughout the land. A light drizzle of rain began to pour, yet Pandu was adamant. He remained on one foot as the sun had not set. Then another loud thunder was heard, and now the sky was fully dark, as clouds had completely covered the sky. Pandu and Kunti kept up the ritual without fail. Just like before, a large thud was heard amongst a drizzle of rainpour. Soon, the banging of kettle drums were heard throughout the forest. Footsteps of a retinue of beings were heard. Another large thud was heard amongst a clatter of footsteps and kettle drums. The sound of the thuds began to increase in frequency. Pandu recognized the thuds to be the footsteps of some gigantic animal, but he didn't dare waver from his penance, and neither did Kunti, as the sound of the kettle drums began to get louder and louder. The thuds began to get more and more frequent. After a few moments, the loud thuds stopped. The kettle drums were loud and reverberating throughout the forest. "Arise and awake from your penances, O scion of Kuru," said a deep, thunderous voice. Indra, the king of the celestials, had arrived. It was at this time Pandu brought down his hands and stood on both legs to see a spectacular figure standing before them, seated on a large white elephant whose tusks were covered in gold, surrounded by dancing women, kettle drum beaters, and bards who were singing hymns of the holy Veda. The mighty Devendra, king of all celestials, had appeared in all glory before them. The sages and hermits in the forests joined their palms as they bowed before the majestic sight. Devendra, deep red in complexion, wearing a satin purple upper garment and a satin golden lower garment, holding a thunderbolt in his lower right hand and a large mace in his upper right hand, a sword on his upper left hand, and a downward facing palm on his lower left hand, appeared before them in spectacular glory. Pandu's joy knew no bounds. He bowed low to the king of all celestials. The king of all celestials looked at Kunti with a sharp, stern look, and Kunti managed to look up to him meekly. Both Pandu and Kunti reached only half of the elephant's knee in height when they stood. Pandu and Kunti looked at Indra with hopeful eyes. "I understand your desire, Pandu, but the request must come from Kunti, as she has iterated on the spell which binds me. Now go and instruct your wife to request the boon," commanded Indra, when Pandu nodded at Kunti fervently. Kunti was, for the first time in her entire life, overcome with a certain shyness. She couldn't help herself as she blushed blood red at the sight of Devendra. She struggled, much to her astonishment, in formulating the words for her boon. "Mighty Indra, please," she stammered. A terrible thought occurred to Pandu. What if Kunti is too shy to request the boon and Indra leaves? The whole year of penance would be wasted. Pandu gently placed his arm on Kunti's shoulder when Kunti spoke once more. "Mighty Indra, wielder of the thunderbolt, ruler of heaven, if our penances have pleased thee, then give unto us a son of your equal, who will bring fame and glory to the whole noble house of Kuru. This is my desire," said Kunti, very bashfully through tremendous effort and, of course, much to Pandu's relief. Indra nodded slowly, raising his lower left palm, when a jet of scarlet red light blasted from the center of his palm and into Kunti's forehead. Once more, did Kunti have the same feeling as before. Yet there was a slight difference in this one. Kunti felt energized as the heat emanated from her forehead and dropped to her spine. Kunti had a feeling of excitement and a deep desire to do something. The second the heat settled on the bottom of her spine, it began to roll into a small ball, which then began to get bigger. It became the size of a berry, then an apple, then a mango, and before long the size of a watermelon. But this time, Kunti didn't feel the exhaustion of childbirth. She was still standing when Pandu directed her to lay down. She did as directed, and with no pain or strain, she gave birth to a slim and slender baby boy. This child shall be known as Arjuna. He will be the best of all bowmen, with none equal to him. He will have the prowess of Rudra himself in the art of archery. He will bring great glory and fame to the house of Kuru. He will be the best friend of the mighty God incarnate, Mahavishnu. He will be one of the few beings who will learn the secrets of celestial weapons. And as he is sired by me, Devendra, he will have a portion of me running through his veins. That is my boon to him, said Indra, as both Kunti and Pandu bowed along with the sages with the forest. As soon as they opened their eyes, Indra, his entourage of celestial dancers, kettle drummers, and bards had disappeared into thin air just like the deities before, leaving the cooing baby Arjuna in the arms of Kunti. Pandu was overjoyed. All his penances bore fruit. He was truly happy with a son equal to the gods themselves. Pandu had everything he ever wanted. He sported with his lads and indulged in every parental activity. He let Yudhishthira ride on his back while Bhima and Arjuna sat and watched, with a laughing, teary-eyed Kunti. One day, as he was prancing on his back with the infant Yudhishthira, he saw Madri, the second wife, sitting all by herself, alone by the river, while the three children played with Kunti and him.
I hope you liked today's episode of The House of Kuru. If you have not already, please subscribe to this channel and like this video so that you will be notified every time a new video is uploaded. Thank you.